first step to improving your decision making, awareness and vision. To make a good decision, whether that be playing a through ball or making a dangerous run in behind if the opportunity presents itself. You need to actually spot these opportunities. You need to see them. If your awareness isn't good, you'll be missing so many opportunities, as you literally won't see them. Think about this. Two players with the same technical ability. One player makes 4 key passes a game, the other makes 1 key pass a game. Most likely, the first main difference is the first player actually saw the 4 opportunities, whereas player B, he just missed them. What does top level awareness look like? Let's look at a few examples. Before you receive the ball and as the ball is traveling to you. So now you've seen how frequently the top players look. Now the next important thing is to break down what are they looking for specifically. As with all this constant scanning and checking your shoulder, you could easily get an information overload, resulting in the ball coming into you, freezing on the ball because you wasn't able to calculate the information that you took in. And I bet you can relate. A really helpful way of framing this situation is a system that I've come up with, the awareness checklist. A checklist of information that you need to gather when scanning the field, eventually becoming an ingrained habit that you will do without even thinking. 1. Nearby opponents. This is usually the first piece of information players gather before anything else. Why specifically? To see how much time you have on the ball, to see how many touches you can take on the ball before you're at risk of being tackled. There's no point in seeing your striker make an amazing run to then receive the ball and get tackled because you didn't know how long you had on the ball. I want you to think back to a time you received the ball and you rushed your next decision, potentially giving the ball away. Did you really know how much time you had on the ball? And let me show you why this is so important. Back to the saying, top players will know what they will do with the ball every time before they receive it. We've already established that's not true. Plenty of times players receive the ball and then look up for options. But guess what information they always know? How much time they have on the ball, how many touches, and how many seconds they have on the ball until they have to make up their mind. When you now receive the ball, you know the first vital piece of information. That will help with your decision making. The time you have till the decision needs to be made. Whether that decision is a deadly pass at the last second, or turning away from pressure to safely lay the ball off at the last second. Sometimes you have more time than you think, but ultimately, this will add way more composure to your game. This is because the information will now be a trigger that will lead you onto the next relevant piece of information you need to find. For example, your teammate needs help on the ball and you become an option. As you have checked your immediate surroundings, you see a cue, an opposition player closing you down. You calculate you will have very little time on the ball, if any, if you were to receive the ball. The defender closing you down fast is the cue, which activates the trigger. I will have hardly any time on the ball and I need to be quick, which helps you identify the most relevant information you need to know next. Where are your teammates to pass for when you receive the ball? There is no point in trying to see if the opposite fullback has made a run. This is not your main priority, as you need time and space to even execute such a pass. Your lack of time and space on the ball is your trigger to gather the relevant information. Either a simple bounce pass back to your player who gave you the ball, or scanning to see where nearby teammates are making themselves available. Those are the 2 main pieces of information you need to identify in this situation. Now, on the other hand, you check your immediate surroundings and you see a defender closing you down, a cue, but they are further away this time, triggering the conclusion you will have 3 to 4 seconds on the ball. Now you have the luxury of prioritizing different information. For example, scanning for space and seeing which teammates' movements is opening up what space. Looking for your teammates' movement for potential through balls, instead of finding your nearest passing option. If you've calculated you will be pressured straight away when you receive the ball, it's pointless. You would keep the ball simple, keep it moving, and keep trying to find positions where you can pick up the ball with more time on it. This is when you then prioritize other information. 2. Teammates' positioning and movement. Why specifically? The reason you look where your teammates are positioned, whether they are stationary or moving, is to see how it's affecting the opposition players individually and as a team shape. You have to remember, the aim of the game is to keep the ball moving whilst picking up positions that either cause an overload or act as bait to draw a defender out of the position, leaving space for another teammate to exploit. So having awareness of your teammates is partly to see who is an available passing option for when you receive the ball, but also to see what teammate is attracting what opposition player. Which leads to our next checklist. 3. Space recognition. The top players know how to find and create space. Okay, but what does this mean and why is it important? Space is the aim of the game in the attack. Space is opportunity. Space for a passing lane. Space to position oneself to receive the ball freely. Space to make a run in behind. Knowing where space is and where the space is being created due to a teammate's positioning allows you to refine that filtering system for all of the possible information we spoke about earlier that we can gather when scanning the field. Again, let's think about a thought process to explain this. After you know how long you have on the ball and you decide it's long enough to turn and execute a potential pass, and you have scanned to see your teammates, now as you look for space, either free, occupied by a teammate, or beginning to open up because your teammates' run or positioning has pulled the defender out of the position. You can now narrow down and filter the relevant information you are gathering. For example, you will stop focusing on the part of the field that has no space. Again, important to know where has space and where there isn't space, most likely due to an overload of opposition players versus your team. As remember, space is the aim of the game. Look at all the possible information you could gather. The first step to filtering the relevant information is something we have already covered, the awareness checklist. As mentioned earlier, is a roadmap that will help guide your decisions for you. When you check your immediate surroundings and see you are being pressed, this will trigger the filtering system to filter in the information you now need. Support and passing lanes to teammates. If you have time and space to turn to get your head up, this is where it can become a little bit more overwhelming. And learning how to effectively filter the relevant information will take time, lots of training and game time. Training your information filtering system has 3 components. 1. Understanding the rules of the game. Space is king. Learning how space is created, which is a whole course in itself, by the way, and how to spot space. But ultimately, keeping this message at the front of your mind. Space is king. Once you find where the space is or isn't, you can use that information to shrink down the part of the pitch you're looking at. 2. Building your pattern recognition system. Having your head up, looking for cues that eventually become noticeable at a glance without thinking. As well understanding what specific options, specific situations present. For example, one example of this is this pass, and we see it again and again. Top players recognize the situation they are in and the option it may present. Now, they know what cues to look for to see if the pass will be on. Enough space for the pass, if my teammate is running, if the defender's late in noticing your teammate's run. 3. Tactical IQ. Depending on the level you play at, if you're at a really good club, each game you play will have specific objectives based off the opposition team you're playing next. The analysts and coaches will study the other team, how they press, their most dangerous players, their weaknesses, etc., and adapt training that week to get the upper hand. So going into a game, you can be one step ahead already. Great managers will teach you what cues and triggers to look for to have in your mind going into the game. For example, if they do this, we do this. This is one example of why some players say it's easier playing at a higher level. Usually because the management and coaches are top level, going over every fine detail, with expert coaching to explain what opportunities will arise on the pitch, allowing players to develop the filtering system before the game, literally being one step ahead. Fast decision making is about discarding as much irrelevant information as possible. You go to a restaurant and the menu has 70 items on it. You go to another restaurant and that has 10 items on it. Which restaurant will it be easier for you to break down which meal you want? As we choose which option is best based on what we have to compare it to. Without space recognition and knowing the relevant cues to look for, you'll always be ordering off the menu with 70 items.